Hello, welcome to Introduction to Microeconomics. This course is going to be taught by video recording with a mixture of live lectures, but this is the video recording section. So, in this course, we're going to cover a broad range of microeconomic topics and try and get you guys up to a level that you can really start applying this to everyday life and have the basic reasoning skills you need to apply economics to a variety of situations. That's the goal of the course, and we will try and get there. But first, we're going to do some introductory concepts. And what better to begin with than the format of the lectures for the course? So I'm going to teach with a combination of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. So this is the Word format. We're going to also move to PowerPoint's next lecture when we start covering graphs, which are a big portion of the course. The way I do it for Microsoft Word is basically I have in the bold underlined portion the concept, below it a definition or description of the concept, and then an example in this light blue color. And well, we're going to start with the definition of economics. So the very broad definition of economics is that it's the study of decisions made under scarcity. Scarcity being this sort of, I mean, it's a very understandable concept, but the technical definition is the fact that we have unlimited wants in the presence of limited resources. We will never be able to get everything that we want. Maybe reflective of a Rolling Stones song. There's just limited resources. How do we distribute it? But that can apply to a broad range of characteristics. You can go as wide as microeconomics, which encompasses the decisions of states, countries, even worlds. Well, one world. But we're going to do microeconomics, which is more specific. It can be divided into broader categories. You can study the decisions of workers, decisions of firms. You can also study the decisions of governments in microeconomics in a different framework. You can get as specific as categories like environmental economics or transportation studies. These are categories that have quite a bit of individuals investigating them. One of the most specific categories in microeconomics is actually one of the largest studied, which is health economics. There's a lot to do here because, well, people are not very uniform in how they use healthcare or have to pursue healthcare in the United States. That's especially prevalent. So anyways, my example for economics, one of the questions we might ask, or one of the questions we might introduce, is what do firms choose to produce? Firms have limited resources, they have limited time, they can't do everything. You can't have a firm that just produces a million different things. I mean, you have companies like Tesla, they branch into a couple of different categories. Companies like Amazon that do an awful lot, but they do limit their ability to produce. Um, and on top of this, a labor economics question would be, where do workers choose to work? You very much have limited time as a worker. You have to select where you work. Before that, you have to select the education you take in order to be able to work where you want to work. And final question would be, maybe how does the government distribute their limited funds of COVID to best improve the environment, or sorry, the economy, or well, maybe also the environment. So the scarcity in each of these systems is somewhat prevalent. The government has limited funds. I know they make the money technically, but they can't really rampantly inflate the value of that money. So they have to be wise in where they distribute it. And these are the types of questions we're going to be able to answer with economics. Now, to get there, we are going to make some assumptions. In this course, we're going to stick to those assumptions for the majority of the course. We're going to have some very distinct branching off points where we cover like topics like behavioral economics, which is where I do research. Um, but for the most part, we're going to stick to these assumptions pretty much verbatim. So these three core assumptions, they're very useful to make transitory conclusions. It's very common. I mean, it's essential in social sciences. It's almost everywhere in natural sciences as well. It's not just economics where we make these crazy assumptions. Now, the ones that we're going to make in this course are a little bit restrictive, and I'll explain when we get to them. But without making these assumptions as to the baselines of human behavior, we're not really going to be able to extrapolate any scientific hypotheses from any of our questions or any of our analysis. So we make it to enable that approach. The first assumption we're going to make is that people are rational. Right off the gate, this is a big one. The rationality assumption isn't what you typically hear. It encompasses a lot. So particularly that people are acting in a manner that they maximize their own personal well-being. That means they only care about themselves. They don't consider other people. You can extend this to family units and still be fulfilling this assumption of people are rational. On top of that, we also assume that people have perfect information. They know every price in every market. They know all the worth and the value to them of each good. And we're going to get into basically where this falls short and how to pull this back and really apply it to reality, because this assumption is very strict. So an example of this in action would be that when choosing to pollute, so if a firm they want to pollute, they're not considering the cost that pollution inflate or imparts on others, whether it makes the enjoyment of a park worse or it just outright kills trees, which makes lumbering a more expensive process. These factors, they only care about the cost-saving action to themselves. They don't externalize this external factor of what pollution does to other people. That would be an example of people, or in this case, firms being rational. We'll talk about firms as individuals, essentially. Now, the second assumption we're going to make is that people respond to incentives. They're not inert, that they're willing to adapt and change their behavior. So people will adjust their behavior when new situations arise. And specifically, they respond to economic incentives. This could be, in fact, I'm going to change that right now. I'm hesitant to put it in here because you'll realize quickly through this course that basically we take normal English words and we just put economic in front of them. And I don't like to do that. So in general, we're looking at responses to incentives from individuals. Basically, that people will adjust their behaviors when new situations arise and do it in an economically feasible fashion. So when a consumer is at the store, they go to buy some towels, they don't really exhibit this idea of brand loyalty. If they see a buy one, get one deal for a different brand that has the same characteristics as the brand they normally buy, they wouldn't really be inert. They would not be stubborn and just continue to buy the brand that they buy. They would take advantage of this deal if it's better for them. So they go and buy the best deal. An example from the book is that in I forget the gangster's name that was very famous for robbing banks at the time, but there were a lot of bank robberies, and the FBI recommended to banks that you implement these security improvements. You hire security guards and you create fiberglass windows in front of your tellers to avoid robbery. Banks didn't do this. They didn't do this because, well, the cost to implement those security benefits were much higher than the losses each year, the expected losses of those bank robberies. So it wasn't really economically feasible for the banks to spend money to avoid a cost that's less than the money they'd spend to avoid it. And I mean, these are comical examples that you'll see in sitcoms very commonly as well. Now, the third assumption, this one is really important. This one will not go away when we go to behavioral economics. It's a much more mathematical assumption. It's really, honestly, you need calculus to understand it very well. We're going to try and get a basic understanding of it. But that is that decisions are made on the margin. I can see some of these before I talk about them. But yeah, it's limited in terms of how we can teach online. Anyways, decisions are made on the margin. That's our third assumption. People consider each choice individually rather than collectively. You don't consider what came before when you are choosing to produce the next unit of some good. Now, this is going to be divided into two components that we'll mostly look at, marginal costs and marginal benefits. Marginal cost is specifically the cost to take an action one more time. So to produce one more good for a firm or for a worker to work one more hour, they would both have marginal costs. So for the firm to produce one more good, the cost would be what you put into labor, what you put into raw materials to make that one more good. For the worker to work one more hour, it's going to be their opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is something that we're going to get to below. Or I guess you could also view it as the effort they have to put in, the effort they invest to work that one more hour. We very often quantify effort in economics in monetary terms. The example here is to pick one more orange. It costs Tropicana 20 cents in wages. The cost will grow as you get more oranges. So the marginal cost is going to increase as you get more oranges because you're going to exhaust your I guess you call it an orchard. A bunch of orange trees. It should be an orchard, yeah. You exhaust your orchard. You pick the ones closest to you early on, so it takes workers less time to go there, collect those oranges, bring them back, and the further and further out you get, the more expensive it gets. The marginal cost will increase as you go beyond the initial batch. Marginal benefits, this is going to be the benefits taken action once more, so the flip side of marginal cost. So if a firm produces one more unit, they get to sell it at the market price. Their marginal benefit is the market price. They're gaining the revenue from selling the good. Very important that marginal benefit is the revenue for firms, not their profit. So the revenue is the marginal benefit for firms. And we'll talk about this over and over and over again throughout the course. Really, we won't even stop talking about it until the very end. So picking one more orange for Tropicana, it's going to enable them to sell it for $2. They benefit from having that orange picked by selling the orange for $2. Okay, so I have another example for this, which is a little bit more of a breakdown. I'm going to show you guys on Paint. I call it the boy in the banana tree. And I like to draw it because I like to show off my drawing talents for my students each year. They're not good. Anyways, let's say we have a really, really tall banana tree. In fact, let's say we have an infinitely tall banana tree. So banana tree keeps going there. We're going to have one banana per tier. And in between each of those tiers, we're going to have a beehive. Like I said, are you guys impressed yet by my drawing skills? Well, I hope so. Now the bananas, so we're going to have a boy. We're going to have a guy here. We'll call him Mogi from Jumanji, or not Jumanji, Jungle Book. Mogi from Jungle Book. Anyways, the bananas exhaust. So as our guy Mogi comes up and picks the first banana, he doesn't pass a single beehive. So he gets that banana. That's his marginal benefit. He chooses to pick one more banana, so his marginal benefit's that one more banana. And he doesn't get stung by any bees. So he has no marginal cost for this first banana because there's no beehives in his way. As he goes further and further up the tree, though, he's going to have to pass the beehive. So for each beehive he passes, he's going to take one sting, no matter what. And the bees don't exhaust. The bananas will exhaust. He's going to pick one, and he's going to pick the easiest one first. It's going to have the same marginal benefit as the future bananas. And the marginal cost of picking bananas is going to go up and up because he's going to exhaust his easy supply first, and he's going to pick the harder ones later on. So for this first banana, he would have the marginal benefit of one banana. And he's going to have the marginal cost of 0 big stings. So he's going to have 0 marginal cost. Now for the second one, his marginal benefit is always going to be one banana, but his marginal cost is going to be increasing. So he's going to take one bee sting. So we'll just call it one BS here. And that's going to continue to increase. So the next one that he picks is going to have a higher marginal cost. He's going to have to face these 2 beehives, 1 and 1, and get 1 sting from each. Just gets stung on the way up. Maybe it jumps down off the tree. Maybe it's pretty resilient to falls. Anyways, you're going to have 2 bee stings of that second banana, and it's going to go up and up and up. So we could draw his marginal cost as a function. Let me get a glimpse of how good this pink looks. Okay, the pink does not look very good. We're going to draw his marginal benefit is always going to be 1 banana. And I can use words here. And his marginal cost is going to be a function of how many bananas that he picks. And we don't have to have the math foolproof yet, but it's going to be for basically n bananas minus 1, because, well, for that first banana that he picks, he doesn't get a bee sting. And this could be plural. So these would be our marginal benefits and our marginal costs. Now, the way in which individual agents, economic agents, take into account these marginal costs is they're going to produce until, or they're going to choose to perform the action. He's going to pick bananas until the marginal cost is more than his marginal benefit, until it's more costly than it is beneficial for him to perform it. So he will go ahead and perform it until basically the marginal cost is greater than the marginal benefit. Now we'd have to equate bee stings to bananas, which we can do. We do it in what's called a utility function that we'll cover really briefly in the course. Again, utility function is something we need calculus to fully understand, so we're only going to get a glimpse at it. But let's imagine that bee stings count for 0.1 of a banana. So if you get 10 bee stings, basically it's worth 1 banana. Then he's going to perform this. He's going to pick bananas until he gets that 11th banana, where he's picking 11 bananas. And he's getting 10 bee stings for that 11th banana. It's just worth it if they're equal. The marginal cost is equal to marginal benefit. You're still going to perform the activity. So let's draw this out real quick. So for the 11th banana, we're going to have the marginal benefit equaling 1, the marginal cost equaling 11 minus 1. Remember, he's picked 11 bananas, so now he's going to pick the 11th banana, incur 10 bee stings. The bee stings count for 0.1 of a banana, which we'll just have as the standardized unit. We won't have a B as the symbol. Boy, this does not come out well. Sorry about that. The ones do not look very good here. Anyways, it's going to be 10 times that 0.1, which is going to give us a marginal cost of 1. So the marginal cost for the 11th banana is going to be equal to the marginal benefit, which means that technically it means that Mogi's indifferent. He's indifferent to picking that 11th banana. The marginal benefit is exactly equal to the marginal cost. It's just barely worth it or barely not worth it. So we always err on the side of barely worth it. You're always going to perform the task in which marginal benefit is equal to the marginal cost. It's a simplifying assumption. Sometimes you'll talk about 1 epsilon beneath or something like this, but there's no reason to bring technicalities into an introductory course. So at this case, the marginal benefit is going to be equal to marginal cost. At the 12th banana, though, run out of room here. I'm sure we can get more. So the 12th banana, we'll call it 12th bee. The marginal benefit, it's still going to be equal to 1. But now the marginal cost is going to be equal to 1.1. So marginal cost is above the marginal banana, or the marginal benefit. Marginal banana. We can call it marginal banana, actually. It's technically a marginal banana because the margin term here is banana. Anyways, it's going to be more costly than it is beneficial for him to perform this 12th activity, so he's not going to do it. He's going to say, okay, I'm going to pick 11 bananas, and then I'm going to call it quits for the day. So he does not pick the 12th banana. And that's your marginal analysis in very basic terms, which is really all we're going to get into it. So back to our Word document here. Now the last thing we're going to talk about in the introductory section, this is a really, really important factor. It's going to come back again and again in the course, as will the marginal benefits and marginal cost terms or concepts. This is opportunity cost. This is something that we all actually innately understand to some degree or another. We quantify it in economics, and we're very specific in how we do that. So opportunity costs are going to be the net benefit of the highest valued alternative. One forgoes for a choice. It's a very wordy definition. Basically, it's what you give up in order to pursue another activity. For firms, it's going to be the profit that they could have made in another market. So if Tropicana decided they didn't want to sell oranges, they instead wanted to sell apples, they would be giving up the opportunity costs, the opportunity to produce oranges and make the profit that they're currently making in the market. So if they chose to make apples, they give up the profits that they were making in oranges. And for it to be worth it for them to make those apples, then their benefits have to be more than what they're giving up, more than their opportunity costs, more than their economic costs, really. But economic costs are something that we'll cover. I don't remember where I put it in the course. I think I wanted to cover it in the next section. I haven't put it in those notes, so I'm going to add it to those notes. Actually, anyway, we're going to cover it now. The next notes are cramped, so let's cover it now. So economic cost is going to be the opportunity cost plus what we call the accounting costs. We'll get to economic costs right now, just a bit. So opportunity costs, Ford, I just watched on Netflix this History 101 about the history of plastics. So Ford at the time of World War II was working on developing this plastic vehicle. And they gave this up. They forwent it or they could have forgone it. They could have continued to pursue it rather instead of choosing to produce planes for the U.S. military during World War II. Now they weighed their costs and benefits there. They said that, okay, if we chose to produce plastic vehicles during World War II instead of supplying the U.S. military with planes, then our opportunity cost would have been the profits that we gave up in terms of choosing not to supply the U.S. military with planes. Now, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the U.S. military pays a lot of money. They really flush the pockets of individuals they do business with, somewhat famously. So these opportunity costs were really high for Ford, and they chose absolutely not to do it. They chose to give up on this pursuit of plastic vehicles production, and to instead focus on making airplanes for the U.S. military during World War II. And doing it, they developed new technologies that forced them to decide, not force them, but made them to decide to go other ways, to go out of the way of creating plastic vehicles. Okay, so on to the last concept from this introductory lecture. That's going to be this concept of economic costs. So these are your opportunity costs plus your accounting costs. Accounting costs are what you're more familiar with. That's going to be labor, wage, building rent, all these factors for firms. Opportunity costs is going to be giving up profits. So let's say for Ford, I know you guys can hear the typing sound. Sorry, during World War II, when choosing to make plastic vehicles, their opportunity cost, or let's say something reasonable. At the time, maybe $1 million was reasonable. So their opportunity cost would have been $1 million. That's the profits that they could have made, or would have made, or did end up making rather, from selling planes to the U.S. military during World War II. Oh God, sorry, this is meant to say economic costs. And they'd have some labor to make the plastic vehicles. This, let's say, it would be a lesser extent. Let's say it'd be $500,000. And that comes in the form of research and development, wages, cost of inputs, factory rent, all these factors in production. Wages would be an input, technically, but I like to make a distinction early on. They act somewhat differently than other inputs, which would be machinery used for production. And so their economic costs, it would be 1.5 million overall, and the breakdown would be 1 million in opportunity costs, 500,000 in accounting costs, and that's going to make their economic costs. So in order for them to choose to make plastic vehicles, their benefits for making those plastic vehicles, their revenue that they would gain from selling them, would have to be more than these economic costs. That's how firms make decisions. In the past, I've taught this as a portion of the course and use it as a basis for essentially talking about supply and demand. It's a bit hard to go over now because it's really not in the textbook, not presented very well in the textbook at least. I think it's really not presented at all in the textbook, if I'm being honest. So since we're online, unfortunately, we're just going to really touch on this concept. But it's how we think of firms evaluating their costs. Whenever we're talking about costs in general, they're going to be economic costs. They're going to include the opportunity costs. But we're just going to really touch on it due to that restraint of not having in the textbook. Now there is one more very important topic to the introduction to economics, and that's the story of incentives. In general, everyone responds to incentives. It's how markets come to be. Incentives could be monetary, they could be moral incentives. We're mostly going to talk about the monetary incentives, the economic incentives for individuals to make their work. But there's a great video from Marginal Revolution University, which is this online source for many videos that we're going to look at throughout the semester. Much higher production quality than I can manage in my kind of cramped home. I don't know if my dog made an appearance during these lectures, but she'll be sitting on the couch right over there for most of them. But yes, so I'm going to send you over there for their story of incentives, which is very well done. And the next lecture, we're going to hear about some supply and demand from me again. Anyways, see you guys next time, and have a good day.